because it's Eubank Jr. Benn on Saturday night, live on talkSPORT from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But it's a very interesting undercard as well, and some great fights on that. Chris Billam-Smith will fight Brandon Glanton at cruiserweight. Anthony Yard will fight Lyndon Arthur for the third time at light heavyweight, and Liam Smith will fight Aaron McKenna at middleweight. And Liam's brother Paul is in studio with Spencer, myself and Simon this lunchtime. Before we get to you, Paul, Liam's been speaking about the prospect of what might lie ahead for him after this one. I mean, would he, for example, entertaining fighting the winner of the main event on Saturday night, if it's Eubank Jr. again, or even if it was Benn? If it was Benn, would Liam fight him?
1,000,000% I would, yeah. You know, I've said to Eddie, it was spoke about. You know, I was in Canada when Callum fought Beterbiev, and Eddie asked me, will I fight Conor before the Conor and Chris fight was made. I said, you know, 100% I would. I still think that's a good fight. You know, it's a big fight, and it's a bigger fight now because Conor Benn's name has gone through the roof, you know, the past 12 months, and it'll be a bigger name, you know, if he wins on Saturday night. But it's, you know, names like that, I'm interested in all comers like that, but I think, you know, before all the saga and before everything else, if you put me with Conor, people wouldn't have really been interested. I'm miles ahead of Conor. I think I'm miles too good for Conor. Obviously, coming off the back of a loss to Chris brings people's opinions back into play. But, you know, me v Conor 12 months ago is a no-brainer for me.
It's a no-brainer for Liam. I mean, because of all the ingredients that go into it, do you agree with him, Paul? It would make for a great match, him and Benn.
After the public have bought into it, yeah, but I think before he was touted to be fighting Eubank, I think people would have said it was a mismatch between Liam and Conor Benn. I keep seeing people saying, and I'm not having a go at Conor Benn saying this, but I keep seeing people saying, oh, Liam Smith knocked him out, so Conor Benn will. It's like, what do you think the difference is between Liam and Conor Benn? Liam's a couple of weights above him, or at least, you know, at middleweight now, he's where he's staying. Liam, he's a big puncher. Liam's held his own and can hold his own with bigger men and super middleweight. He spars Callum regularly, you know, he spars light heavyweight all the time. He's a big lad, Liam.
Let's not forget the levels they boxed at either.
That's what I mean.
You know, Liam's been competing at world level. He's a former world champion. You look at Conor Benn and you go, yeah, look, he's rising and he's developing well, but he's never even won a British title. So you go, making those comparisons, until he steps up, you don't really know.
I think Liam was British champion probably 10 years ago, you know what I mean? And like, Conor's yet to do that. I'm not saying the British title is everything or the be all or the barometer of what you need to be doing, but sure. Liam's been in there with top class, top quality fighters and is one himself.
You see, funnily enough, you're quite attracted, I think, Simon, by the undercard, with the likes of Liam on that undercard, who has been around for a while, has great pedigree, by Chris Billam-Smith, who's in there as well,
absolutely,
by Anthony Yard, who you rate very highly.
Yeah, I don't think there was a burning desire to see Anthony Yard versus Lyndon Arthur again. I understand the metrics of it because it's 1-1, but I saw the real Anthony Yard turn up against Lyndon Arthur. I like Lyndon Arthur. I think he's a really noble fighter, but I think Anthony Yard will do the same thing to him that he did in the last fight. You know, I think there's some interesting fights. I think his brother's fight is a great fight. You know, I think the undercard is actually more compelling for me personally. That's the part I'm going to miss by not watching it.
That's the hook, then, mate. And
yes.
You can come with that.
But you can't be hypocrite. You're not watching it at all. You can't be. How can you be a hypocrite? How can you pee all over a fight for 2 years and then go, oh, Turkey wants to give me a ticket, off I go then. I can't, can I? Even if I wanted to.
You can always leave when Eubank Jr. and Benn come into the ring.
There you go.
Make a big,
You know how there's so much, Paul, made of this, the family dynamic here in this one. You know, 35 years ago, it was, of course, Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. And, of course, we'll never forget those times. The family dynamic, is it easy to manage in boxing? I mean, we hear that Eubank Sr. will not be in Eubank Jr.'s corner, although Benn Sr. will be in Conor's corner. Now, there's you and Callum, always supportive of Liam, as Liam has been of you when you fought, as you have been of Callum. This family dynamic is a strange thing.
It depends on the family. The thing with us, there's 4 of us, and whenever anyone fights, the 3 are there. 2 are in the corner. Me and Stephen are going to be helping out in the corner on Saturday night. We did Callum's corner on his warm-up fight, and then Buddy McGee's the head coach, obviously, but it depends on how you're brought up. We were brought up, you've got to, you know, we laugh at our Stephen, he can't leave a party without giving everyone a hug, everyone, and he's just too nice, and like, we're a really close family, and it's well documented, but there's other people who aren't quite as close to families, and I know friends and other family members, extended family, who don't really speak to the brothers or sisters as much as we do, but in boxing, it can also breed a lot of arguments or fights or competition.
As is the case with Eubank.
As is the case with you. Now, my personal opinion on Chris Senior is if he was offered a wage to be involved in this, I think he'd be involved in this. I don't think there might have been anything there, and I think the stuff about the weight or he's mentioned about Conor being dangerous for Conor. The two grown men that they're going to make a weight limit. They're going to be a similar weight on the scales, and the next day they'll both rehydrate. Chris has to weigh in on the second weigh in the morning, early in the morning. So on the night he'll be bigger on the night, but he's the naturally bigger fighter. But that's why you're being paid the amount of money you're being paid to do this. So
Eubank Senior has been protective of his son, hasn't he? Paul was protective of his brother.
But they're very different dynamics. These are siblings. This is father-son. I think the difficulty for Eubank Senior is if he's not the main event, he struggles with it. And he's a fascinating character. But when you speak to him about his son, it's almost as if he denies his son the right to step out from underneath his father's shadow, which is difficult. You look at their family.
It's a big shadow, isn't it?
It's a big shadow, and it's very difficult to step out. If you look at his family, I remember watching Liam come out in the round that he knocked Eubank out, and I think it was Stephen that gave him a real telling off to get himself in gear, which then resulted in Liam going knocking out. So there's a different dynamic there completely between father and son and brothers.
And guys, let's not forget, the personal issues that Senior's been dealing with outside of boxing as well. So we've got to take all that into consideration. He's had a tough time. And I think that's a big part of him not being involved in this.
Chris is not making a lot of sense with his observations now, because the original observations that we had 18 months ago in the studio was, look at my son. He's emaciated at 157. This is murder. He's now talking about what's happening to Conor going up 2 weights. So which one are you railing against?
That's what I was confused. I listened to the interviews and I think, well, Chris is making the same weight limit that he's made for his last 4 fights. He's made 160 for his last
2018.
Yeah. For his last 4 fights, though, he's been under 160. The 5th fight before, I think he was 163, 164. But you if you're involved, be involved, but support your son. But what I keep hearing in the interviews is he won't listen to me. Well, he's 35 years of age.
He's a man.
My son's 18 now. He doesn't have to listen to me if he doesn't want to. He takes my advice on board because he thinks my advice is correct or responsible or honourable to him, but I want the best for my son.
Does it sadden
not
you,
for me?
Does it sadden you, Paul, that Eubank Senior will not be there in his son's corner?
It doesn't really bother me. I'm not being nasty saying that. I'm going to watch. I loved watching Eubank when I was a kid. I loved to hate him when I was a kid. I was a Benn fan. I loved watching Conor Benn. I remember the sweat on my palms watching him against McLennan as a young lad, and I loved Nigel Benn. He was everything that I wanted to be as a boxer growing up. But it's 30 years ago, 35 years ago now, and there's been about 3 or 4 different batches coming through since then, and I'm now watching these two, the sons fight.
I think the saddening thing out of it all is the breakdown in the relationship between the father and son. I think that's the sad thing. Whether he's going to be there or not be there because he wants to be front of house and Eubank Jr. didn't want him to be there, that's a different situation. But the breakdown, in father-son, that's the sad thing.
The media, ultimately, some of the things that Chris Eubank Sr. has said, he says if you don't learn, you're going to feel. And he talks about the fact that Junior's career was better on track when he was there. He lost fights when Chris Senior was there too, against certain levels, against George and against Billy Joe Saunders. But the fact of the matter is that Chris Eubank Senior has to accept that his son is his own man.
Yes,
and it's not about him.
Yeah,
and this idea that he has to make it all about him, I find disappointing in him because. But when I listened to him the other day, he is right what he's saying. When you talk about Eubank Senior, he carried himself in a certain way. When he sees his own son smack an egg in the face, he's going to look at that and go, that's not how I carried myself. That's not how I... So I understand why he says that.
Times have also changed.
Of course.
Social media days now.
Just in the minute we have left, I want to throw a couple at you. When you're working there in the ring on Saturday night, as you will be, with Liam, are you in your fighter's corner or are you in your brother's corner?
Good question, but probably both. But listen, I'm not Liam's coach. He has Joseph and Declan, and I'm there in the corner to help out. You watch Liam or you watch Callum. Watch Callum against Boazzi. He walks back to the corner, he looks at me, he looks at Steve, and he'll look over the ropes for Stephen and Liam, and he listens to Buddy intently because Buddy's a phenomenal coach. 10 seconds to go, the mouthpiece goes in, he stands up, he looks at me and he waits for the advice, then he looks over the ropes and looks for the other two brothers. It's what we've always done. I really trust my brother's opinion on boxing. I trust the knowledge. I know they can read the fight really well, and without sounding big-headed, I think as a group, we've all been taught boxing the right way from the start, so we see boxing the same way.
A final one from me to you before you leave us, Paul. Eubank Jr. Benn on Saturday night, how tough is it for the man in the middle? How tough a job has the referee got?
I don't think it'll be tough at all. I think the pair of them could meet heads on each other's chest and just bang away. You know, the way they're both saying they're going to come out and fight, but how many times do we hear fighters saying they're going to come out and stand in the middle of the ring and go toe to toe, and then they get on the back foot and box? So we never know, but hopefully the referee's not busy. There's too many fights. There's been a few fights recently where we're talking about the referee after, not necessarily the fight.
It's great to see you, mate.
And you, thanks for having me again.
All good luck to Liam. Albeit McKenna's a real fighter, isn't he, as well?
He is.
He's a youngster, but it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And we hope that both come through unscathed. Of course we do. Paul Smith was live on talkSPORT this Thursday lunchtime.